A coroner's court inquest has started looking into the death of 61-year-old Richard Collier after he was found dead in his cell at HMP Chelmsford. At the end of July 2020, Richard Collier broke his clean streak of having a completely unblemished police record after he suffered an out-of-the-blue mental health breakdown and then attacked his wife. Until that point, Mr. Collier had no history of offending or issues with his family, with the attack being called completely out of character. Mr. Collier was arrested on July the 29th and later charged with attempted murder, which I don't think he should have been charged with, as murder is a premeditated crime, and seeing as it's reported he had a sudden mental health breakdown, murder doesn't appear to fit the bill. On July the 30th, he appeared at court and was remanded into HMP Chelmsford, but just 2 days later, on August the 1st, Mr. Collier was found unresponsive in his cell. Paramedics were called, but they could do nothing to help Mr. Collier, and he was pronounced dead. The coroner's court inquest is set to look at the facts surrounding Mr. Collier's life, his mental health at the time, and how he was handled by the police, courts and prison service in the days before his death. It's said that police confirmed there were no suspicious circumstances and that Mr. Collier was alone in his cell at the time. Yeah, a bit like Jeffrey Epstein. Coroner Sean Horsted said he was arrested on July 29th following allegations of a serious assault on his wife. He was subsequently charged with attempted murder by police. He was remanded to HMP Chelmsford, where he arrived later that day. He was a retired engineer with impeccable good character. He was married to his wife for many decades. He suffered significant mental health circumstances in the weeks before his death, and it culminated in an unprecedented assault on his wife. It was also mentioned that Mr. Collier was assessed by a mental health nurse who reported his ideas of self-harm and suicide, and that him going into custody would bring an increased risk of that. Right, mental health breakdowns are a horrible thing to go through, and yes, I'm speaking from experience. If this man had a breakdown, then he was likely not in full control of his thoughts, and although that doesn't excuse any assault that he had committed against his wife, it's a huge factor to take into consideration in mitigation. Going through all of that and then being told you're being charged with attempted murder is likely to send anybody back into a breakdown. 61-year-old Collier and his wife had been married since they were 23 years old. They've got 2 children. His wife spoke at the inquest and said her husband had cherished her and their marriage and that he was proud of us all. She said, "We lived a simple life, taking pleasure in each other's company. He was measured and a problem solver. The breakdown in his mental health was sudden and shocking. The incident that led to his arrest was completely out of character, and I still remember it to this day. I always remember Richard as a calm, kind and friendly man. I suffered with PTSD and find life very hard. He supported me emotionally throughout our marriage. If I was worried about anything, he always had the time to listen. He was my husband, my best friend and father to my children. He was everything to me, and I feel lost without him." So clearly no indication as to why Mr. Collier might want to murder his wife, further strengthening my opinion that he shouldn't have been charged with attempted murder. Even his sister said that they never had an argument growing up and that they were very close. She said, "I hope that the inquest will shed some light on what happened to Richard in the period leading up to his death, and that changes will be made to ensure that another family doesn't suffer the trauma, sadness and distress that we have been going through since Richard's death." Now, of course, the inquest is looking into things that led to Mr. Collier's death, but I bet my arse they won't be looking into why he was charged with attempted murder and why he was remanded, seeing as although he had a breakdown and attacked his wife during it, he wasn't a dangerous man, had no previous for anything, and based on reports was not a further risk at the time, so it's unusual, especially when so many other people who have committed similar offences and who do have previous records are allowed to go on bail. This inquest is said to last up to 2 weeks, so we will revisit this. So if you haven't already, click that subscribe button so you're notified of any future videos.